Okay, so when it comes to tile, this is a really important aspect if you're trying to do this yourself, and you don't want to have a lot of trouble with setting the tile and cutting it, primarily cutting it. You really want to choose a tile that is going to be easy for you to be able to cut and eliminate any types of chips. And especially if you're going to go with some cheaper saws, you want to get something that's going to be more forgiving than to get something that's going to require some of these more expensive tools to get a good finish. And as a tile contractor, I mean, it's some of the most frustrating days, or days that you get tile that just does nothing but chip, and doesn't matter how much money you spend on your blades, you just sometimes can't get things to work properly. So over the years, there's just like a lot of techniques to be able to prevent, when it comes to doing layouts and different things, to be able to make the cuts be in the corners of the shower, trying to talk the customers into different types of edging where you're not going to be able to see some of this tougher tile. And unfortunately, some of the tile that is actually the most difficult to cut is the cheaper stuff. So if you're trying to save money, sometimes buying a cheap tile is going to make things more aggravating for you to install than anything else. And one of them that I think is probably one of the most frustrating ones is a porcelain tile. These are really popular at like Lowe's or Home Depot, that you purchase for like $2 a square foot or something like that. Kind of mimics that marble look. And it's hard to say what brand it is, but some of these are just some of the most painful things to be able to cut and not get chips. So I would pay attention to the type of tile. So this is all porcelain tile. Most of the time you'll see on the box, it'll say porcelain tile. But I would be careful with some of the high sheen types of tile like this. So this is another porcelain tile that I got from Lowe's. These are all actually from Lowe's. But Home Depot kind of carries a very similar thing. And this is another porcelain tile that, we're going to cut them, test them out. I mean, I almost would recommend that to a certain extent. If you're going to go to the box stores and buy tile, buy a couple of them, cut them on your specific cutter, see what kind of, how it's working for you, and whether it's going to be something that's going to be really painful. And I'm only saying that because if you're buying it from the box stores, you're not really ordering ahead of time. You're just getting what's available there. So you might as well pick something that's going to make it easy for you to actually cut. So buy a couple pieces. They're only a couple bucks. Cut them on the saw that you're actually doing them on before you commit to doing an entire shower with it. So we're going to cut a bunch of these, but I do want to show you one difference between some of these. So this is another type, and this, as you can see, has a red clay base on it. So this is more of a ceramic tile. The red clay is something that I don't particularly advise my clients purchase, just because when you nick it or when you cut it, you'll see the red edging. So sometimes this can be very painful, especially if you're going to go up to like a metal edging, like we're going to be doing around our window. So this is like a Schluter edging, and we're going to butt right up to the edge of this. So sometimes this can be really problematic to cut. So I would avoid clay type of base, because it's not a very strong tile. If you did this on floor, you can easily drop something on it and chip it. And then once you see that red clay base, it's just going to look awful. So there's definitely lots of different clay bases that are similar to that. This is another one. This is like a plank tile. Again, it's not a very durable product. It is easy to cut, but sometimes you do have some issues with that clay base not looking that great at the edges when you have a finished edge. Now, what I do kind of recommend though is porcelain tiles are great. Porcelain is definitely the most rock solid type of tile out there. It's gonna be able to take the most abuse, and obviously the porcelains are the ones that really come out with a lot of different unique patterns that are just a lot different than a lot of the ceramics. But getting a piece like this, where it's kind of a little bit textured and the edges are a little bit rounded, this is a little bit more forgiving. You can cut this and then just be able to use like a sanding pad, just wear down those edges, and you're never going to be able to, you can almost see that this is the same color all the way through the actual tile. So this makes a real big difference. Even if you didn't have a great wet saw, or any type of great saw, you could just be able to sand up those edges and probably get away with this looking good in any fashion. So something like this, you know, it all depends on the design and the style that you're going with. But, you know, that is something that is definitely going to be easier for a beginner or somebody who doesn't do a lot of tile work. Now, what we're going to be doing in this shower is actually something I probably wouldn't necessarily recommend. This is a ceramic as well, but the one thing that makes this a little bit difficult is the really high gloss sheen to this. And it being ceramic, I have a feeling that I'm going to have to be using a wet saw if I actually wanted to get any type of clean looks. I'm not going to be able to use my dry, I mean, we're going to try out the dry saws, but this is definitely going to be unforgiving with the cutting of it. And it just, this is not a very expensive tile. This is another one from Lowe's, $2 a square foot, and it's just plain white. But being ceramic, it's going to be very delicate. Let me see what else. Another thing to consider that will kind of complicate your installation is using glass. If you have glass, you're going to need a wet saw to be able to cut this effectively, especially with the way they're making these designs now. They're not even like half patterns anymore. They're kind of all over the place. So if you try to cut, you know, kind of a 1-inch piece, it's not going to work out very well for you. So be aware of that glass is definitely going to be a little bit more troublesome for you to cut and make look good. Now, we did have another high gloss. So this is another porcelain tile, very high gloss tile. Works great on the snapper. I already kind of did a snapping cut on it. Really makes a nice cut. But again, this high sheen on a cheaper saw can make you easily have some chips on it, and you can kind of notice it right away, especially around something where you're going to have something exposed like our window frame. You know, these cuts have to look pretty nice. That's a tough one so you can see chips on there. That's not really going to go away. Now, you can get away with this as being the cut that goes towards the tub because you're going to be caulking it. But if you were trying to put this against a metal edging, I mean, you might be able to sand this up then. I mean, you could make that work. You're going to be fighting this. You're going to be fighting this kind of tile on here. That's where the snap cutter makes a nice clean cut, because then you can just was a clean cut. Let me try that again. I should have got more of this tile. Yeah, so that's a bit cleaner all the way along there, and then any of this rough edge. Yeah, much cleaner. There's really no chips on it. It's a little wavy. This is still a really tough type of tile to make look good. This is the type of stuff I would avoid, try to get my customers to avoid buying. Okay, so that's the first cut. I could live with that all day long. Looks pretty good. And honestly, this is the most forgiving type of porcelain tile, if you ask me, where it's like kind of textured like that. You know, you can really get away with a lot. But that's my first cut. We're gonna make a couple more cuts.